Actually, probably not to be too anticipated here at this point, because we've been talking about big structural questions. How do we operationalize this a little bit further? Offers and ads. Earlier on in the webinar, I said, oh, eye roll, are we going to talk about buyer personas? This is where we talk about buyer personas, offers and ads. And we want to create offers that are in the awareness and consideration stage if you don't already. You probably do, or you might very well, if you're indoctrinated into the inbound marketing methodology, have these in place already. You're just not using them for paid. So if you have it, outstanding, thumbs up, kudos to you. We need to now repurpose those awareness and consideration stage landing pages and other offers for the paid advertising channel. If you don't, consider this my challenge to you to create them, because that's going to be key in reducing your cost per lead and ultimately your cost for customer acquisition using the journey-based advertising strategy. Consider your buyer personas when developing these ads. Got a couple that I want to show you here to talk about specifically some of the learnings that we had for these campaigns. Here on the top left is an ad that we sort of accidentally optimized for the buyer persona, and I'll explain what I mean here. So this was a display ad, mostly focusing in on awareness stage. These folks weren't necessarily aware that there were some changes coming that are going to add a high-risk population, a relatively expensive population, to Medicare Advantage plans. But this is a serious issue, an issue that this client can help them solve. We ran a split test based upon the aggressiveness of our language, for lack of a better word. You know, hey, this one's a little more high pressure, doom and gloom. All heck is gonna break loose here if you don't contact us immediately. And then we did something that was a little bit warmer, fuzzier, and then something in between. The funny thing is, our messaging really isn't what moved the needle one way or another. But what we found is when we analyzed this split test, what really made a difference was the size of the display ad. And why was that the case? Well, putting on my journey-based advertiser hat and thinking about our buyer persona, this is a relatively sophisticated group of people that we were running this ad to. So if we could put 5 or 6 words on a display ad, that just wasn't enough. It wasn't enough detail. It wasn't enough precision to get them to click. But when I was able to use some stats to reference what the population was specifically, and this is not that particular ad, reference what that population was specifically, and have some more meat on the bones on the display ad, that's when people actually converted. So what we learned from analyzing these ads was that our buyer persona was sophisticated enough that they needed to see more information, more details. And now our result is, let's show them bigger display ads. Let's not show the small display ads where I can't give them enough context that they feel comfortable and confident enough to actually click on the ad itself. On the bottom left, we see a very high performing text ad that we ran on Google Ads for another company. And again, this was about reaching out to our buyer personas, understanding what was important to them, dozens of different ads. Testing is important, but when we think about buyer personas first, maybe we even need to do less testing. This was not from running a bunch of A/B tests. This was from understanding what was important to our buyer personas and getting it right the first time or the second time or the third time, not necessarily taking a lot of time and money and effort to see whether, using a number was more effective than not, or this call to action versus that call to action. It was about understanding sort of the principles behind inbound about our buyer persona. Now, on the right, this is a LinkedIn ad that we are currently running for a client who was getting leads from paid ads, but they weren't getting good leads. They were spending a lot of time kissing frogs and not a lot of time turning these leads into actual sales. And with a small team, they needed more of their leads to be qualified. So Nada on my team, shout out to Nada, I think she's on the call, on the webinar here, developed these ads and included different people. So you see one of them, we showed other demographic profiles of people as well. And we came up with a really tight audience that met their buyer persona just the same. So by tightening the audience and having a really strong ad that appealed to their needs, we were able to, in the last 90 days, have a 50% close rate on ads coming from paid. Now, I'll tell you, not a zillion people, not a million new leads here, but the leads that are coming in are absolutely qualified and are converting at a very high rate because we're thinking about this in terms of our journey-based advertising ad. All right, cool. So there's a couple examples, a couple learnings from using journey-based advertising in your offers and in your